It's the Jim Ross part of the story of the
No,
documentary.
you're not going to make me uncomfortable at all because I read that there was some heat between you guys. What had happened?
Well, this is where I wanted to cut loose and be myself, and I was able to do so, and be able to tell a good full story about the documentary, and not leave people guessing on one of them. And this is one of those ones I wanted to get out there and really hear my voice and fill my heart with this one, because it's one of the biggest ones of all that I feel the most, really, really, hurt from. And just between me and you, Steve, I am 100% convinced, whether I'm right or wrong, that Jim Ross ruined my career. And how that came down, unfortunately, is there's only three witnesses, and it's Jim, God, and me. But I was sitting home one day, and what had happened was we were down at wrestling school at WWE, WWF at the time, and we were learning the ring ropes and all that, the 20-foot ring and all that stuff. And I got an argument with Shane Helms, and I ended up slapping him. And after I slapped him and I turned around to walk off, he hits me with an ice bottle that was frozen that opened up my head 20 stitches deep. And all the wrestlers, keep in mind, at that stage, there were 12 WCW guys hired. And at the 12 being hired, everybody back then thought for sure Buff Bagwell's got a job. He's got a job. We're just trying to make it. He's got a job. Now, I hoped and wished, but that's how everybody else looked at it. Well, here is Shane Helms holding the rag on my head, crying, telling me he's sorry. And the wrestlers actually convinced me, with cell phones out, that to lie and say that I fell. And I said, guys, y'all know there's no way this is going to stay hidden. There's no way. Well, I do what the wrestlers asked me, and I said I fell to, I'll never forget it, it was to Fit Finley and Laurinaitis. And I said we fell. I said I fell. I slipped and hit my head, and they knew I was lying, but they didn't see it, so they didn't know what had happened. And so I just went ahead with it, and I flew straight home. I didn't ask for WWF. I didn't ask them to fix my head or go to their doctor. I did my own money, my own insurance to keep the heat down from everything. And all of a sudden, I came back to Raw the following Monday, and when I showed up, after being told everything I was told, and Shane Helms crying and everything, I see Shane Helms and the Hardy Boys coming at me, and I said hello to them, and none of them waved and none of them said hello. And as soon as I saw that, I went straight to Laurinaitis, and I said, brother, here's the deal. And I told him the whole story. I said, here's what happened. Here's what's going on. Well, he got all 12 guys together, made us all apologize, shake hands. Because at this stage, he's trying to have a job.
Right.
He's got 12 guys he's got to get over to, WWF. So we all shook hands and did the whole thing and got everything together. And so we go out and have the match. And from there, we just really thought that, everything was going to be okay. And then, once the match happened with everything, Jim Ross, after the match happened, it was a bad match. We kind of stumbled over each other. We didn't have a good match. And me and Booker's had 10,000 barn burners. We actually had a kind of a bad match. And that night, believe it or not, WWF took the blame. They said, you know what? It's our fault. Pat does the main events, and we thought he was going to talk to you guys. And Johnny Laurinaitis has you guys, so we thought he was going to talk to you. Nobody talked to you guys, so y'all did the best you could. Don't worry about it. Let it go. The next week was Atlanta, Georgia. So on Friday, Jim Ross, God, and me are on the phone, and Jim Ross says, hey, buddy, just want you to know I want you to take the weekend off, which was Augusta and Birmingham, and then Atlanta, the Dome. And he said, take the weekend off, let your head heal. We got big plans for you at Phillips Arena on Monday in Atlanta. So I was like, thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. Well, the story got out, and it stuck like glue that my mother had called to get me out of those shows. Now, why in the hell would I cancel 2 shows after already working with stitches in my head when I had 2 drives when I'm trying to fit into the WWF 2 weeks being there? I'm kissing ass. I'm walking on eggshells. I'm shaking hands. I'm kissing babies. I'm trying to get in WWF and do it right. And so somehow or another, though, the mother story to this day sticks like glue. And so we go out and do the whole deal. I show up, get to the building, and they fire me. And I didn't even know I had to raise my hand. And when they get me in the room, I raise my hand, and Vince goes, "You don't got to raise your hand, Mark." I said, "Well, I said, I feel like I do." I go, "It sounds like y'all are firing me." And Vince goes, "Oh no, we're not firing you." He said, "We're releasing you." And I raised my hand again. And he goes, "Mark, I already said you ain't got to raise your hand." I said, "But what's the difference in firing and raising? I mean, and releasing?" And he said, and the son of a bitch had an answer. He said, "Well, if we fire you, we got to redo your contract." He said, "And if we release you, we can bring you back in 3 months and no problems, and you just start back up with us." And so at that stage, I knew they were full of shit, God bless them, but I also knew to start smiling, shaking hands, and just leave. And I did so. I started shaking hands, kissing babies, and realized it was just best to, get out of there. And I got in my car, bawling and crying, and I called up, my parents. They were in the stands, and I said, it's time for you guys to come on home. And they were like, "What do you mean?" I go, "I'm home. It's over.
I'm not in the building anymore."
Yeah, I'm not in the building there, so y'all can come home too.
So you're maintaining that Jim Ross set you up? Did your mother ever make those phone calls?
Absolutely not. Mother never made those phone calls, and I even went the route like anybody else would. I even went the route. Okay, let's go the route that my mom slipped up and made the phone calls. Now let's go this route. Why would you do the invasion of Booker T and Buff Bagwell in Tacoma, Washington, when the next week you're in Phillips Arena? Why wouldn't you just wait a week and put Buff Bagwell versus Booker T at the Phillips Arena in Ted Turner's backyard? So to me, it all made sense. We knew even up in Tacoma, why are we wrestling when next week's Atlanta? But to me, it all kind of made sense. But let's be truthful to each other. Did my mom make the calls? Could she have? Absolutely. Do I think she did? Absolutely not. But I really believe with all my heart that that Jim Ross really, really, really took his time out, and even took time on the round table with all the legends, and took his time out to bury me and say that, I showed up at these shows. And I just don't know where that hatred come from for him to want to take that much time out to really, and I'm talking about, how Jim was. He loved football players and athletes. We talked every week when he was at WCW about.
But did he bury you to the higher ups?
I don't know. I really don't know what happened. I just know that, and I did what they told me to do. They said in 3 months, call us back. And I waited about 2 weeks past the 3 months. And so it wasn't right at 3 months. And when I called Jim Ross, he literally answered the phone with a deep breath. And I swear to God, I went, "Jim, I'm just calling back because you told me to." I said, and he said, and he didn't call me Bub. He went, "Yeah, Mark." I said, "Jim, I'm just calling you back because you guys told me to call you in 3 months. I waited 2 weeks longer than that, and I'm just calling you back." And he said, "Mark, we'll call you if we need you." and hung the phone up on me.
Cut and dry, that's all.
Cut and dry, and that was it, brother.
You know, let's go back to that match that happened. You said Tacoma, Washington. I went back and watched that match last night on YouTube, and it wasn't so fact that the match was a bad match. Was it a great match? No, it was mechanically was what it was. It was a hostile environment. That was a WWF crowd, dude, and all of a sudden they put in WCW guys, and man, look at Booker T's career. Look at your career speaks for itself. It was a hostile crowd. Again, the match wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't the god awful stinker that people have made it out to be. And when I say hostile crowd, I'm not running down that audience. I just meant, you know how it was, dude. Back then, you were either WWF or you were WCW. So you guys were, it was like playing an away game. You guys were having an away game in WWF territory, and people didn't give a shit about you guys. And that was my take on that, dude.
Absolutely. And think about this. If you really play it back and watch it, Stacy Keibler was the announcer. She got booed out of the building. Shane McMahon comes down, gets booed out of the building. Arn Anderson and the other announcer comes down, gets booed out of the building.
Yep.
And here we come. Booker goes first. He comes down and gets booed out of the building. And I swear to God, back to me thinking something else was up with it. I just believe it with my heart. My music comes on, and I swear to God, I took the step to walk out, and Shane McMahon steps in front of me and goes, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, don't look in the cameras." And I said, "Have you ever watched one of my matches? That's all I fucking do." I said, "The only thing I fucking do is pose and look in the cameras."
That's the gimmick.
That's my whole gimmick. So if you watch it back, I'll walk down that aisle and act like the fucking TV cameras got the plague.